Well, we wanted to find out more about how our close friends can have such a powerful impact on our health. So joining us now is Martin Calder with Center Counseling Service to explain more. Marty, thank you so much for calling. For coming.
That's right.
We called
I
you.
was the one
You came in.
I was the one that did 120 minutes. I didn't want to say.
We're so close.
On the other end of the phone.
That's right.
Let me ask this. Do women need close friends more than men, or is it something that universally people need a close friend?
Yeah, they need a support system. Now, for me, I listened to your chat a little bit earlier, and I don't have, I wouldn't call a close friend. I don't have a best friend right now that is my best friend of all time. I've had close friends throughout the years, but not usually that way. And so, but I do need that support system, because support systems are what help us to cope with the things that happen to us. What happens when we have something that's problematic, or especially children as well, something that happens to them, we close off, we go in ourselves, and we feel like we're the only ones that are experiencing that. And so friends to help us to realize that there's other things out there, and also that there's a support that we can try things, and like you said, sounding board, but we can kind of do things that way that friends can say, yeah, that seems to be right. That's what people usually do.
Okay.
So how do we develop that close relationship with somebody? All give, no take, all give, some take, no give, all take. What's the perfect balance?
Yeah, reciprocal friendships are by far the best way to go. And that is really hard for people that maybe haven't developed good friendships in the past. That's one of the hard things, is that they'll get into a cycle where as children they didn't have very close friends, they didn't have a very good support system. And so as adults they carry that on, albeit in a poor way, and so they don't have good relationships. And then they end up seeking out people that are that way, either taking advantage of them, or not supportive of them. And so that's one of the things I always say is it should be reciprocal. My friend that I used to work with, that we got to be fairly close, we go to lunch and I'd pick it up one time and he'd pick up another. And we weren't thinking about it, it just kind of happened. But if every time you're like, man, I become more drained when I go, it's one thing for Libby to be able to sound out to her friend, but for friends that way every time, you might as well get a therapist. You might as well go to my office and pay somebody that actually is a professional. Not that Libby isn't great, but
she sounds off to me as well, so it does go back and forth. Does it have to be reciprocal in the same way? Like, I've had friendships where there's certain things that I will do to help her, and there's certain things she'll do to help me.
Right.
So we
and I think one of the fallacies, and I've talked about when I've commented before about children and stuff too, is that we have this idea. We compare our worst with somebody's ideal, or we see something on television, and it's like, oh, look at this TV show where they're all best friends. In reality, usually 5 friends don't stay together for 12 years, and in apartments they can't afford. They do things that their things change, and so to have a buddy that Matt and I are friends on Facebook. We're Facebook friends, and we'll talk back and forth. I'll throw comments out to him, and it's fun. It's an interactive thing. We share some similar interests. For somebody else, I may be more closely to and more personal information. You have to be careful. You don't want to be that one that shares everything with everybody. And Facebook, and we've talked about electronics, and electronics sometimes has a tendency to do that. It's anonymous, and so people end up sharing a little bit more, and that friend isn't reciprocal. They're not really getting back true feelings. They might say, oh, is everything okay? But they're not really there for them. They're just responding to it.
In the age of social media, and you talked about oversharing, do we need to rein it back just a little bit and realize that the 500 people, 600 people are not your close personal friends? Some things appropriate here, other things are appropriate for face-to-face?
Yeah, that's one of the things, one of my pet peeves, I guess, and people have gotten a lot of support from Facebook, and there's some great things, or other social medias, and there's some great things that happen with that, for sure. But on a day-to-day basis, you've got to have some personal interactions. That's the definition, really, of a friendship, is that face-to-face time that we have together, that socialization to say, you're not my family, you maybe can give me some insight that maybe my family wouldn't, or somebody else, or you can kind of give me some props that I wouldn't necessarily get someplace else, and I feel like you're being, honest with me. And like I said, you don't want somebody that's just a yes man, or somebody that's too critical, but it's got to be, as you said, it's got to kind of lift you up. Like they said in that piece, it's got to be that sort of mutual support. Oh, I feel better when I'm around somebody, rather than, oh, that made me worse. I don't know.
It's an important relationship to have. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Marty.